Hey solos, happy Halloween! So you want to go to Walt Disney World all by yourself and you are wondering if you are going to get any haunted vibes. Well, solo spoiler, I definitely don't think of Walt Disney World, Magic Kingdom in particular, which is what we're going to talk about today, as particularly haunted. But I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best to give you a bit of a haunted tour. Hi, everyone. It's Samantha. Olaf may not know who Samantha is, but now you do. And welcome to Disney Solo Magic, the #1 podcast for solo travel to Disney World, now publishing on Thursdays. So this is our Halloween episode. And what I really wanted to do was to kind of talk about like the haunted nature of Disney, Disney just generally. But I don't think of Disney as a very haunted place, but it is a place that has a lot of emotion, a lot of spirits, a lot of generations, a lot of history. And I was like, we can take some of those things and do a little bit of tour of Magic Kingdom. And everyone loves a tour of Magic Kingdom, right? So that's what we're going to do in this episode. Because you all know I love a good theme, and I was not going to let Halloween go by without something kind of spooky. Now, if you aren't really into any kind of spooky stuff, don't worry, it's not going to be that spooky. And if you aren't really into like some woo-woo spiritual tarot cards things, there'll be a little bit, but don't worry, it'll be mostly history. All right, so you can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook. You can listen to this on Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube. On YouTube, it's great because you can make comments on the episodes, but you don't necessarily get the episode when I publish it because of some weird YouTube glitch that I'm still trying to figure out. So thanks for listening on YouTube, but bear with me. And there's also a Patreon. There's a $2 tier, $4 tier, maybe a little bit more than that, depending on the currency. And you get reflections on all the episodes, and you get to watch the videos of the solo stories. You get a breakdown of what we're going to do for the month and an opportunity to rate and review. And when I go on trips, you also get some extra content and things like that too. And today I actually just booked my flights for my December trip. I had a hotel in the calendar for the last few months, I think since August, and I wasn't sure if I have to cancel, but I don't have to cancel. Things kind of worked out, the contract I was working towards. And so I just booked my flights and I can't wait. So I can't wait to create a ton of content for you when I am there in December. It's a semi-solo trip. But don't worry, all of you solos are going to be there in my heart. And actually, a lot of you solos are going to be there in the parks as well. So that's really awesome. I am thinking it'd be cool to do a bit of a meetup, but at the same time, I also don't want to like infringe on people's like solo time. But if you were in the parks that first week of December or on the Walt Disney World property, then I hope to see you. Please come and say hi. Let's give each other a hug. Let's cheers our Joffreys. Let's do something to like mark being friends through the airways and also in the parks. It's been really awesome actually the last year, I guess, of being able to go to the parks and like meeting up with people who have become friends through the podcast. And that's really special. I've really appreciated that. So yeah. All right, let's get right on into it. Halloween. All right. So I don't think of Disney as a very haunted place. Maybe it's the sun. Maybe the sun bleaches out all the ghosts. I don't know. But it's really fascinating that that's the case because, like I said in the introduction, there are tens and thousands of people that are there every day, who are there every day with their own stories and heightened emotions and histories that are just layered upon layered upon layered in these spaces. And yet I don't really think of it as particularly haunted. Now, if you are, a spiritual type of person and you get a different read from that, please let me know because I am fascinated by that. I do think of Epcot as a little haunted though. I mean, Epcot's definitely a little haunted, right? Epcot definitely has some haunted vibes. But I was thinking of doing this episode on Magic Kingdom, and I was like, yeah, it's weird. I don't really get any kind of like woo-woo vibes from it. And then I was just kind of like thinking generally about tarot and the Disney parks, and I was like, yeah, I can't really associate a tarot card with Magic Kingdom. And I was like, I wonder if I can do that with Epcot. And I was like, oh yeah, the world, 100%. I'm talking about the Rider-Waite card, the Rider-Waite deck. And I was like, immediately the world, not just because of World Showcase, but also because of like the circle of like walking around World Showcase, and then like the figure so prominent in the middle, because I do feel like you can be a bit of you can have some main character energy when you're at Epcot for some reason. I don't know. And then I was like, well, how about Animal Kingdom? And I was like, oh, the strength card immediately. Yes, because of the lion, but also because of the strength of the Imagineering across all that park, and the fact that they have really wrestled, if you will, so much story into fairly small footprints. And then I was thinking, well, okay, well, how about Hollywood Studios? And then I was like, the Chariot. I was like, well, okay, the Chariot. Yeah, immediately. Why? Well, I was thinking because of the like Art Deco-ness of the Chariot, and like the way that the card is set up, but then also because I associate Hollywood Studios with fast rides, and like those were just immediate associations. But for Magic Kingdom, no. And I guess one could say the sun, but there's a baby in the sun. And for some reason, I just don't, and of course, this is a solo podcast, but there is something about Magic Kingdom that isn't just individual baby energy. I really think of Magic Kingdom as very much a community energy, even when you're there solo, especially when you're there solo, because you are there as part of a story and there as part of a community. And I don't know, I just don't associate that. Please let me know what you think. But I just don't associate Magic Kingdom with any of that type of energy. But when I started to create this episode, I was realizing that you could walk around Magic Kingdom and find these spots that were kind of haunted or kind of spiritual, not in terms of religious, but in having a little bit of like woo-woo energy. So why don't we go through that right now? So first, there is definitely something about Magic Kingdom that says, that suggests that it should be very, very haunted. It has over 50 years of history of stories and hopes and dreams and emotions and all of that stuff built on top of it. But Disney does this really smart thing of constantly adjusting things that are old in order to make sure that they never look outdated. And that is a real special gift, because if you looked at Main Street USA and you're like, yeah, turn of the century, middle America, Main Street, blah, 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 blah. The fact is that has really changed a lot since when it opened in the 70s. And that changed from when Disneyland opened in the 50s. And it's because there are these constantly shifting elements that it always will look old but never outdated, because nostalgia really comes from about a generation and a half back. And so when Walt was creating the Main Street USA for Disneyland in the 50s, he was thinking about that generation and a half back and this kind of old-timey look. And then they would update that for the 1970s for Disney World. And when you look at old pictures of Disney World, specifically Main Street USA, you're going to see a version of turn of the century, middle America that you can see in movies like Hello, Dolly or The Music Man, because it was the same era of nostalgia. And so Disney has created a space that is nostalgic, but is not haunted because of the constant tweaks to make sure things look old and nostalgic, but not outdated. And that is a real ghost of a ghost. That's a real ghost of a ghost, that they have worked really hard for you not to see that ghost when you are down Main Street. And I feel like it's really, really fascinating. I always think of the movie Little Women, and you immediately have thought of a different version than I have, maybe or maybe not. The fact is, Little Women, there's 5 versions that I guess it's once every generation. And if you look at the costumes, for example, in those movies, you can now look back and think about how even though the movie takes place in the 1850s, those costumes really reflect the aesthetic of the particular time period that the movie was actually made in. And so it's those same kind of tweaks that are happening at Main Street USA across the rest of the park, of course, but in particular Main Street USA. And when you start looking for it and noticing how, yes, things look like they haven't been updated, but that is the special haunting power. Also, the 1994 version of Little Women is obviously the best movie and one of the most perfect movies in the world. So moving on, the other thing I want you to take a look at when you are doing your little haunted walk around Magic Kingdom is that they've actually created, oh, this is going to sound dark. They've actually created a bit of a graveyard. No, I mean, yes and no. I mean, yes and no. Because it's not buried. It's actually right out in the open. It is maybe a cemetery is a better way to say it. I don't know. But I mean, it's common lore that all of the etchings that are on the windows on the first and second floors, in particular the second floors, are little ways to pay homage to different people within the Disney World and Disney Parks history. So yes, Roy and Walt, but also different Imagineers and things like that. Also, you'll see on those windows that sometimes they even do nods towards the different companies, the different shell companies they created in the 1960s that they could buy, so they could buy parcels of land in Florida on the cheap without people thinking it was from the Walt Disney World Company. And so it's kind of a hallway, this monument, this hallway that's a monument to all these different layers of history. And you are walking through them, and maybe you're noticing them, maybe you're not, but it is a way to pay homage to that which has passed, or those who have passed. Although some of those people are alive, it's the legacy there. So it's quite interesting that even though Main Street USA is so bright and sunny and upbeat, and the energy is always very positive, best best day ever, there really is this haunted quality to Main Street, not only because of this update to nostalgia, but also these different tributes that line the street. So let's continue our haunted walk through Magic Kingdom. We're not going to do all the lands. Actually, maybe we will. Anyway, we're not going to talk about all of the trivia that I want, but I want to point out the Crystal Palace. So we're going to go down Main Street and turn left. I want to point out the Crystal Palace. I've talked about this before, but I just am so fascinated by this particular building, and I really want you to take a look at this building kind of far-ish back. I want you to go as far back as you can and still see the building, maybe on that bridge there. And I really want you to take a look at that building, and I want you to look at how different the right side of the building is from the left side of the building, and how different it is, but how you don't notice that difference, and how different it is, and how the left side of the building really blends into the atmosphere there, and how the right side of the building really blends into the atmosphere there. Halloween time and the Day of the Dead, that is really a time when there is this thinning of the veil between the life and death. And I really think of this building as a bit of a thinning veil, if you will, because of the way that it was created to fit perfectly where it is, but also fit perfectly in Adventureland and also perfectly in Main Street USA. So if you will notice that because of the mid to late 19th century architecture, colonial architecture that they are hearkening towards, they are able to make certain touches to one side of the building to blend in to that same kind of Main Street USA fancy building in Middle America, but then on the left side blend into this idea of kind of a jungle type building. And it's really interesting because of this Imagineering trick to allow you to go between these different worlds, like our haunted ghosts, and not even notice them. And it's not only that this is a really interesting trick that they did, but also it is a reminder of the haunted nature or the haunting of Imagineering in so many places around the park that you don't even notice. That there are so many other places that Imagineers have done particular things so that you're able to seamlessly be in a particular world, seamlessly move through a particular land without ever feeling abruptly shifted. And that is what Crystal Palace does, but that is also what Crystal Palace can remind us. And I just think it's such an interesting opportunity to remember this clever Imagineering that positively haunts so much of all of Disney parks, and that's why we love it. All right, we're going to walk through Adventureland, and I want us to go down to Jungle Cruise. Now, you might notice, you might have remembered how when you are going towards Jungle Cruise, when you're going towards the queue, you actually are going down a tiny little hill. And that hill is actually a really important element on the way that Magic Kingdom was constructed. We could actually think of that little slope downwards as a bit of an underworld gap, if you will. So it is also common lore that Magic Kingdom is actually built on the second floor. So on the first floor of Magic Kingdom is actually the utilidors. It is a concrete structure underneath what we walk upon every single day. Oh, if we were there every single day. And that first floor is only for cast members, and it was created as a way to move cast members and props and merchandise and garbage and things like that around the parks without ruining the guest experience of seeing other costumes in different parts of the park and things like that. However, it was also built because Disney is swampland. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to make sure that they had a really solid concrete structure that would be able to fend off the rest of the kind of swampy land. So they had built this concrete structure underground, and they had, not underground, on the ground floor, like on the ground. You know what I mean? Like on the ground. And they let it dry and sit for a whole year before they then filled it in, they had a roof, but then they filled in the rest of that land, and they put Magic Kingdom and everything that we're walking on kind of on top of it. Because what they wanted to do was they wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to flood. In fact, all of the land, like the soil and stuff that they built up around this first floor that are the utilidors came from what we now call Seven Seas Lagoon. So the water that's in front of Magic Kingdom is this big hole that they had dug out in order to fill up the rest of the land around the utilidors. Okay, just quick pause. So the water in front of Magic Kingdom, that Seven Seas Lagoon, that was created by humans. But the water behind the Magic Kingdom, Bay Lake, that's actually a completely natural lake. And, there's an island in the middle of it, and a family was living on that island all the way through the 60s until they kicked them out in order to start building Disney. So anyway, okay, so back to the utilidors. So whenever you are walking around Magic Kingdom, essentially you're walking on the second floor. Do we get it? Do we understand? Also, if you do a Keys to the Kingdom tour, you get to see the utilidors, which is pretty cool. So when you are going to Jungle Cruise and you go down that little slope, the reason why you're going down that little slope is because you're actually exiting the first floor and you are now going down to where the Jungle Cruise actually is. So when you are walking through Adventureland, you are on that second floor. And when you are walking towards Jungle Cruise and you're going down that slope, you are now leaving the utilidors. So when you are around Magic Carpets of Aladdin, you are on top of the utilidors. When you are at Jungle Cruise, you are no longer on top of the utilidors. And I just think that's a really cool reminder of the underworld of Disney, that for most of the time there's literally an underworld underneath you. And I think that's a really cool reminder. And I just love, like, literally every time I go down to the Jungle Cruise, I always just like think to myself, oh, we're leaving the utilidors now. And that's a nice little haunted thing that you can think of. Now, also, if you are like going towards the Jungle Cruise, you haven't got into the line yet, but you're looking towards where the boats are. If you take a look to your left, you're going to see this little hut. And it always has like funny signs on it and stuff like that. That hut actually was a usable hut up till a few decades ago when they were still using the ticket system. So when Walt Disney World first opened, you had to buy individual tickets to the individual rides. All of the rides cost a different amount. So e-ticket rides were rides that used an e-ticket, and the e-tickets cost the most. So that's where the e-ticket ride comes in. So sometimes people were in the middle of the park and they had run out of tickets and they needed to buy new tickets. And where would they buy it? They would buy it at ticket booths. And that little hut that is around the Jungle Cruise line is one of those old ticket booths that they just didn't remove. If you walk towards Pirates of the Caribbean, there is another ticket booth, and it is used now for this like little scavenger hunt that you can do, and that is one of those ticket booths. There was, I don't know if there still is because of the renovations happening, there was also one of those ticket booths by the Liberty Bell docking harbor. No, those aren't the right words. Where you would get the Liberty Bell, there was also a ticket booth there. So there are these buildings that you're like, oh, what's that? And what that is are these kind of ghosts of an old system of buying tickets that they just haven't removed. You could kind of think of it as like a ghostly architecture. All right, let's go over to Haunted Mansion on our tour. I don't know what you think I'm going to talk about in related to this haunted tour and the Haunted Mansion, but I don't think it's going to be this. And what I'm going to talk about is ghostbusting, being a ghostbuster. So I took a Keys to the Kingdom tour, I guess about a year and a half ago now, and our tour guide used to work in the custodial department, and he was a shift supervisor, and he was, high up and all that stuff. So he had a very special job, and that was ghostbusting. And what I mean by that is that there are a lot of people who have family members who have passed away, and those family members have deep, loving associations with Disney. And so people will bring cremated remains to Disney in order to spread their ashes at Magic Kingdom or in other parts of the resort. A lot of people will bring cremated remains to Haunted Mansion. And even though that's a very nice tribute in theory, in practice, you can't have human remains in a ride where tens of thousands of people go through every day. And so somebody needs to clean it up. A custodial supervisor is one of those people. So our tour guide told us how when it happens, when somebody has put their cremated remains in the Haunted Mansion ride, they have to take the ride down for the rest of the day, which I don't really believe. Because I think it happens more often than I've seen the Haunted Mansion ride go down. So I'm not quite sure about the timeline, but I still do trust what he was saying. And that they have a special vacuum that he says reminds him a lot of the Ghostbusters backpacks that they wear. It's a backpack vacuum. It has a special nozzle. And what he has to do is, sadly, he has to vacuum up. He has to ghost bust the cremated remains from the ride. And even though they use a special vacuum that they only use for this particular type of cleanup, whatever gets vacuumed up goes into the rest of the incineration that they have anywhere else. It doesn't go anywhere special, but it does have a special closet that it lives in, and a special backpack and apparatus and people that have to do that particular thing. So I thought that was interesting. If you've ever considered bringing any sort of cremated remains, don't, because it will just get ghost busted. It will just get ghost busted. But you can, do it in the water, I guess. Not in the pool, obviously. But there are other ways, obviously, that you can pay homage to family members who have passed, or family or friends who have passed who love Disney. But they don't want to be ghost busted with a special vacuum. Also, when you were leaving the Haunted Mansion, I'm sure you know this, but there is that pet cemetery that's there. And right at the top of the pet cemetery is Mr. Toad. And that is a little homage to the Mr. Toad ride that is no longer at Disney World. And there you go. That's his little tribute. Okay, let's continue our haunted tour to Fantasyland, and specifically to the Rapunzel bathrooms. So this is actually the thing that got me really interested in thinking about this particular episode, because of all of the layers of history that are in particular spaces. So again, up until a few decades ago, there was a skyway, which was essentially a skyliner, a gondola system that went from Fantasyland all the way to Tomorrowland. It just seems so dangerous now. It seems so dangerous now, and I have no memories of it when I went in the 80s or the early 90s, but other people did for sure. So if you're walking towards the Rapunzel bathrooms from Haunted Mansion, number one, after you go under that little link between the Columbia Harbor House and the Haunted Mansion gift store, you are going to be in the most narrow part of all of Walt Disney World. So across all 4 parks, that little area right before you get to the Rapunzel bathrooms is actually the narrowest public walkway they have across all 4 parks. And you can kind of feel that. You kind of feel very squeezed in that space. But then you get to the Rapunzel bathrooms and it feels so big and so open. And the reason why is because it used to be where the Skyway was, where the Magic Kingdom Skyliner let people off. It was basically a whole space for a ride attraction entry and exit. And so that's why that space is so big. Why is it bathrooms? Well, maybe you've noticed, maybe you haven't, that there aren't actually any bathrooms in Liberty Square, because there wouldn't have been any indoor bathrooms during those early colonial years. So even if you're in like Diamond Horseshoe, for example, at the restaurant, to go to the bathroom, you actually are leaving Liberty Square. When you are in Columbia Harbor House and you want to go to the public bathrooms, those public bathrooms geographically are outside the limits of Liberty Square. So there are no public bathrooms anywhere from Frontierland to Liberty Square. The next public bathrooms are the Rapunzel bathrooms. So it is a large space because of the Skyway, but it's also a very needed space because of the fact that there were limited bathrooms. So again, haunted. The other thing is when you are walking towards Peter Pan and you're like around the Rapunzel bathrooms, you might notice that there is a Peter Pan mural that sometimes Peter Pan will be there and you can take pictures with him and stuff. But it's kind of an interesting space because it seems quite big and flat and kind of wasted or unused space. Yes, there is a meet and greet there, but not always. And the reason why that looks kind of big is because it was the bathrooms when the Skyway was there. So they were public bathrooms that were there. And again, they weren't kind of big enough for the type of traffic that they needed, everyone coming from Frontierland and Liberty Square. So that's why they built the Rapunzel bathrooms. So all of that history there is kind of in that space and you don't really see it. And I just think that's such a kind of interesting, an interesting reminder of this like ghostly architecture through Magic Kingdom. Now, I just want to say one more thing about the Rapunzel bathrooms. So I feel a little bad about sharing this story because I feel a little bit bad about sharing this story, but I guess not bad enough to like not share the story. So there was this woman on Instagram and it was a reel or something, and she had written like, I took a picture in front of the Rapunzel bathrooms. I guess it was in her 20s, mid to late 20s. or whatever, she was in her 20s. I took a picture in front of the Rapunzel bathrooms. I was there with my dad, and I asked him to take a picture of me in front of the Rapunzel bathrooms, and he did. And then every single bathroom we saw afterwards, he would ask me to take a picture in front of those bathrooms, because he essentially was making fun of me for stopping in front of the Rapunzel bathrooms and taking a picture. And she was like saying it because she was saying like, oh, isn't that funny? The bathrooms, all that stuff. But I just found it so incredibly sad, because and then the reason why I feel bad about sharing this story is because she actually like messaged me after, and she's like, no, you didn't get it. Like, my dad is awesome. He's my best friend. And he was just being silly. And I was like, yes, great, wonderful. Like, I'm glad that you and your dad have a great relationship. But to me, and maybe this is not the case with this particular story, but I know a lot of you can understand what I'm getting at with the larger point of the story, is that it's such an indication of how people can steal your joy and how people can like chip away and steal your joy so much. And those types of memories are around us all when we are at Disney World. I was watching this, I don't even know what it was. It was like two people talking, and one person asked the other person, if you could make up a word, any sort of word, what type of word would it be? Like, what would it mean? Because I'm sure you've seen things like, oh, this word isn't in English, but it means X, Y, and Z, like all those things. So I don't remember what the person said. It wasn't a very interesting conversation generally. But what I was thinking of is a word that represents a moment of repair. So like when there is a particular like trauma in your life, that you can have a particular moment that just kind of like sews up a little bit of that trauma. And when I'm at Disney World, I feel that there are so many of these like little moments of repair. And so I'm telling all of this related to the Rapunzel bathrooms, because I feel like that story that young woman shared, as like funny, as it was, all that stuff really indicates how often people can steal our joy, and how something like posing in front of the Rapunzel bathrooms is a way to just, when people aren't shitting on you for that, is a way of just kind of like mending a little bit of that trauma. And so I think a lot of that happens to all of us when we are going solo, that these little moments that we can have, these little moments of repair, when we just feel like, I'm safe, I'm healing, I'm getting in touch with something that isn't always available to me. And I really urge you to think about, when you're at Disney solo, your own ghosts and your own hauntings that you bring with you, and the ways that you are, I'm thinking of like Nightmare Before Christmas and Sally, who, I actually haven't seen that movie in so long, but she's a doll, right? That's like sewn up, and just kind of like thinking about these like little moments of repair that happen throughout the Disney parks. So I hope you're finding some of those when you're thinking about Magic Kingdom, or when you're in Magic Kingdom, or any of the other parks. All right, so I want to talk about Fantasyland, but I actually want to talk now about Storybook Circus. So originally, the Dumbo ride stood where the archways to the new Fantasyland currently stand now. So when they built that about 20 years ago, they needed to move the Dumbo ride. And so Dumbo picked up and flew over to what we now call Storybook Circus. And there really isn't any remnants of the Dumbo ride where it originally stood. It was behind the carousel. But when you get to Storybook Circus, you're actually going to be able to see some evidence of Dumbo flying over and landing in this new location. If you are around Storybook Circus, you can look down and see that there are some animal prints that are in the concrete. Animal prints like elephant prints, but also peanut shells to represent the elephants. And so this is kind of another haunting, right? A haunting of this particular movement to this new location. It's something that, you don't really see, or if you see, you don't really know the full story. And if you do know the full story, you are totally enchanted by how, again, this haunted history of it. But I think that those are really interesting reminders about the way that things look so stable at a place like Magic Kingdom, but actually have all of these other kind of haunted stories related to placements and things like that. Before we get to Tomorrowland, I just want to reference the Winnie the Pooh ride. So I want to reference two things. Number one, I saw a video. I can't remember if it was an Imagineer. It was a cast member. And I think it was at Disneyland, but I found real resonance in it, even though we're talking about Disney World. And this cast member said, this was actually another thing that sparked this particular episode. It was like the period when I was thinking about whether I should do it. And so I was thinking about it as a bit of a question mark. This was the period. So this cast member was saying that he feels like the Winnie the Pooh ride is super haunted. And again, he was talking about Disneyland, but when he said that, I was like, yeah, it is. It is very weirdly haunted. And I don't know if it's just because of the Heffalumps and Woozles LSD trip or because of the music that's quite dreamy, or the fact that it's such an old school type of ride. But there's something about it that I feel very haunted, and I wonder if you do as well. But another reason is because, and I haven't been able to verify this myself yet, but I definitely will in December, that apparently if you are in the ride and you look up, you are going to see the country bears up there, that actually the ceiling of the Winnie the Pooh ride is where there is storage for a lot of different props from different rides and attractions. And I guess one could say that brings a lot of other residual energy as well. And so you are being stared at by a lot of different rides and a lot of different things. And I think that that's kind of spooky. So I do think that the Winnie the Pooh ride feels pretty haunted. I wonder if you do as well. Okay, so Tomorrowland. You're exiting Tomorrowland and you're going to Tomorrowland Terrace in order to get to Main Street USA and to exit the park. Sad. You are going to see a building to the left that again is this big building, and it doesn't really make sense and it looks quite hefty. And that is because that is where the other entry/exit to the Skyway station was, and they've never really got rid of it. One of the reasons why they haven't gotten rid of it is because it is useful for the character performer that does Tinkerbell during the fireworks, right? That goes down, and they can put some extra machinery and things like that in there. But that is where the Skyway station was. So here is another footprint of this kind of ghostly echo of a different version of Walt Disney World that you don't even notice unless you go out of your way to notice it, which I think is kind of interesting. All right, well, that concludes our haunted episode, our haunted history episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully so next week we're going to talk about Christmas, and hopefully, and that's already recorded, but by the time I record the next episode, I hope that my manuscript on hauntings and curriculum will be in, and I won't be so haunted by the vocabularies of ghosts and hauntings to bring it into every episode. So this was maybe my exorcism out of that language. We shall see, who will know. But please let me know in, like I said, the comments of the YouTube video, for example, if there are some other haunted things that you feel or sense around Magic Kingdom or anywhere on the Walt Disney property. I'd be super intrigued. I'd also be really intrigued if you associate a tarot card with Magic Kingdom. I would love to hear that. All right, Solos, I think that's it. Happy Halloween, and we're back with Christmas next week. Oh, solos. I just remembered something. I, I went to like scroll Instagram before I started I started editing the episode, and I saw this really great picture of Haunted Mansion and the hearse out in front, and I remember, oh my god, I did some other research that I wanted to share with you. So the hearse in front of Haunted Mansion has actually been in a few movies. You can see it in the movie, wait for it, The Sons of Katie Elder, which came out in 1965, starring the cowboy guy. Oh my god, what's his name? I cannot think of his name right now, but I can think of the fact that Robin Williams told Nathan Lane to act like him in The Birdcage. So if anybody was confused with my reference towards masculinity, it is Robin Williams and Nathan Lane in The Birdcage. I'm talking about John Wayne. Of course I'm talking about John Wayne. But also you should watch The Birdcage. So yeah, that hearse is in a movie. It was a real prop that was used. And then because the movie was in 1965, in the late 60s, when they were setting everything up for the opening in 71, they brought it over. So there you go. Also, this is not something I had done research on, but that type of coffin, or that type of hearse that was like a glass that you can see the coffin inside, was a real style hearse. And every once in a while you'll see, well, I mean, some of us, I guess, will see this old newspaper article from the late 19th century that there was a woman in Montreal, Canada, who hired one of those hearses, a hearse like that had the like the clear glass elements so everyone could see the coffin. She hired it for the day, and she lied in it all day, staring out the window, smoking cigarettes. So if you want to think of some other solo travel goals, maybe you should be connected to 19th century Montreal history. Anyway, I hope you like this little addendum. Happy Halloween. Bye. Hey Solos, it's Samantha. I hope you enjoyed this episode and all the episodes of Disney Solo Magic, the #1 podcast for solo travel to Disney World. You can reach me on all of the different social media. All of those links are in this description below. You can also listen to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube. It'd be really great if you rated, reviewed, and subscribed. It's really a wonderful way to let other people know about the podcast. And as you know, we also have a Patreon where you can get bonus content, you can get bonus episodes, you can get all of the videos of us doing the solo stories, and a whole bunch more. So come and join us on Patreon. And thanks again for listening to the podcast. Bye.